For those of you who are aware that I was sick in 2019, I had a stroke, and it took 4 good years for me to recover and to be able to speak and talk like the way I'm speaking now. It has been like a responsibility for me to help, especially for Africans, to understand and know about stroke, because I didn't know about it. I didn't have any clue of what stroke really is. And I don't even know at this young age I'll have something like that. So it has been my responsibility to help. I have been thinking of getting somebody who's trained on the podcast. And fortunately for me, I have been able to secure a physician on the podcast today. She is a person of Dr. Julianna Boateng. Dr. Julianna Boateng is a family medicine physician at Ohio Health. She's happily married and has a beautiful baby girl. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Honestly, it's an honor and it's a privilege for me to have you today on the podcast. Unfortunately, my neighbor had a dog and the dog is making a lot of noise. And so I expect that my audience will just permit me because we can't do anything about that. So please accept that for me. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yes. How is the family?
Everyone is good.
Great.
We're out today.
Yeah.
I've been home most days, most weeks, still on maternity leave. So
Wow.
kind of just home with the baby and adjusting to motherhood.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Like I was saying, I had a stroke. Honestly, I didn't know what kind of stroke that is because I really I was not able to understand when they were speaking to me. But as I get okay or well, I began to understand a lot of things about stroke.
Yeah.
There are different type of strokes.
Yes.
But I don't know what they are.
Okay.
Can you tell us what
sure.
they are?
Well, just happy to hear that you are recovering and you have recovered and you're here and you're able to do this and bring awareness to the community, because it is something that I've actually been trying to do, not necessarily stroke per se, but amongst our community, the Ghanaian community, amongst the African American community, just help them understand like, hey, our health is very important. And instead of waiting till last minute where it's now reactive medicine, we want to do preventative medicine. Sorry, baby's in the background.
No problem.
So that's one thing I do, especially as a family medicine physician. Our job is to help with preventative medicine. Such as things like annual screenings. So everybody just thinks, oh, I'm just going to go to the doctor when I am sick. No, we would prefer that you would see us usually yearly. If there are no other medical complications, just to do the yearly screenings, get blood work, et cetera, depending on who the person is, age group, and whatnot. Even me, I go to my doctor. Doctors have doctors too. And I get my annual screenings. And this is ways that help us prevent certain things from happening. Now, we can't prevent everything. No matter how careful we are, unfortunately, we can't prevent everything. So in the cases of stroke, well, another term for it is cerebral vascular accident. CVA is a commonly used term in the medical, is the term that we use in the medical world for stroke. Now you can have ischemic stroke where there's a blockage in the vessels in the brain, or you can have a hemorrhagic stroke where one of the vessels bursts and bleeds in the brain. There are also things called like TIA, transient ischemic attack, where it's like a mini stroke that happens. So you get the stroke-like symptoms. It can last a couple days, it can last a couple hours, but the symptoms start to resolve. As you get older, you can continue to have these things that we call well, I wouldn't say that's a stroke-like symptoms, but like things like vascular dementia, things like that are like little mini strokes that are happening. But the big categories are ischemic versus hemorrhagic. One is a blockage versus a bleed. Yeah.
So, I don't know so much about this, and up till now, I still don't know so much about it.
Yeah.
In my case, the infection was actually my head. I lost my memory, like partially, not permanently, but partially. I cannot understand anymore. I can't comprehend anymore.
Yeah.
But my body, I can walk, I can move around. What is that?
So it depends on where the stroke happened. So there are different parts of the brain that control different things. So you have centers of the brain, like the motor cortex that controls your body movement and whatnot. Then you have parts of the brain that controls your speech. You have parts of the brain that controls your understanding, your vision, pretty much everything, even how you walk, like the back of your head, your cerebellum, and your brainstem usually controls like your balance and your walking and things of that sort. So it really depends on like how your symptoms manifest depend on where the stroke occurs. So in your case of saying like, lack of comprehension, it probably occurred in like the lateral part of the side of your brain where that controls comprehension and whatnot, and it didn't affect the motor part of your brain. Yeah. So it depends on where it happens, and unfortunately, we can't determine. Oh, this is a spot that it's going to happen. Now, of course, once you get imaging, like a CAT scan of your head, we can see where it occurred. But to say, oh, it's going to go here. It's kind of hard to say that. Usually it's your symptoms that help us determine, okay, this is where it's likely happening. And then imaging confirms where the stroke is, where the blockage is or where the bleed is or whatnot.
Now, I'll come back to that again. But I want to know, stroke, can that lead somebody to death?
Yes, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I have seen cases where strokes can cause death or are causes of death. Sometimes even the complications that persist afterwards. It may not necessarily be the stroke itself, but maybe the complications that occur after that lead to death. So I've had cases where I used to work in the hospital where unfortunately the person who's had a stroke, it occurred in a part of the brain where it affects their breathing and whatnot. Complications happen. They're on breathing tube. They're on medications to try and lower their blood pressure or raise their blood pressure. Then we sit down with the family, of course, and like, hey, this is what's happening. What would you like for us to do? Proceed. Most of the time, some patients, when they're not getting better, family will decide, okay, well, let's put a trach in to help them breathe and a peg tube to feed them. Others will say, we don't want our family member to live like this. So we're just going to pull the plug. I don't want to use the word pull the plug, but we're just going to make them DNR-CC or do not resuscitate. If we were to pull out the tube or if anything were to happen, we do not perform life-saving measures. Also, like I said, depending on where the stroke happened, how long you were down, unfortunately, your brain needs oxygen, right? So after a certain period of time, usually 5 minutes, we can already expect some brain damage. So even if we're able to bring the person back, which most of the time we do, it depends on how long the patient was down. It depends on a lot of different factors to determine whether or not this patient is going to be kept alive. I shouldn't say kept alive. If the family wants to decide to keep the patient alive or just to say, let them go, or how far we go. Of course, we perform all life-saving measures until we can't.
Wow.
Or until we reach the point where we're like, we've done all that we can. Yeah.
So people die frequently with stroke, or
I don't want to say
once in a while.
Yeah, I don't want to say frequently. I don't have the statistics right now off the top of my head, but I don't want to say frequently just because of how modern medicine is, right? Fortunately, we live in a country where response is quick.
Yes.
Now, if we were to say we're back home in Ghana, I would say maybe they're dying a little bit more frequently.
Yeah.
But we live in a country where response time is very quick. From the time, like, let me walk you through a scenario. Like a patient presents with stroke-like symptoms. Right there and then, in the hospitals that I used to work at, a stroke alert is called. Right there and then, the ICU team comes, the neurologist comes. We're getting everybody on the phone or in position to make sure this patient is going to live. The patient has already had scan. Depending on what time symptoms began, they're probably getting medication to help break up the blockage, if it is a blockage, like blood thinners, to help thin out the blood so that if there's a blockage, it's bypassing that. Of course, in a hemorrhagic stroke, we don't want to do that because that's just going to make the bleed worse. So in our country, where we are right now, there are a lot of life-saving measures that would prevent somebody from passing away from a stroke. Like I said, if we were to be back home, unfortunately, that might be a different story. Yeah.
Whilst I was in the hospital, I don't know whether it's a doctor or somebody. She works in the hospital. Actually told me that Black people are more prone to stroke. Is that true?
I would say yes and no. It's more likely due to your risk factors. And unfortunately, yes, Blacks have more risk factors just because of those other risk factors. So risk factors including high blood pressure is a big risk factor. So if you're not monitoring your blood pressure at home, not to say that if you have high blood pressure, you're going to have a stroke, but it can cause stroke. Diabetes, high cholesterol, poor lifestyle, poor eating habits, lack of exercise, genetics, unfortunately, family history. If one person in your family has had a stroke, that's something we want to know because it is possible that you can also have a stroke. And unfortunately, most of these conditions I've listed are African Americans have a higher prevalence of them.
So I said I will come back to something. I want to know in layman's understanding, what a stroke itself. Because sometimes your terms, it's difficult.
It's a whole other language.
Yes. So what is stroke in a layman's?
Sure. So like I said before, stroke is either there. Two types of strokes. You could have a bleed where in our brain, we have a lot of blood vessels that supply our brain with the oxygen and the nutrients needed to help power our body. Now, unfortunately, if one of those blood vessels bursts, it can cause a bleed, right? And because of that bleed, there can be like compression on the brain, which now affects different parts of the brain. Then there's the other half of it where there could be a blockage. So like let's just say, okay, simple, one thing I can think of is like plumbing, right? Once there's a leak in like your sink or something like that, water gets everywhere. Same thing with the hemorrhagic stroke, which is a bleed. Once there's the pipe in your brain bursts, blood goes everywhere, right? Same thing with the blockage. Now, once your drain is blocked, right, the water that you need is not being supplied. So a vessel in your brain being blocked is not supplying that part of the brain with the nutrients, with the oxygen that it needs to function. And so our brain can only survive so long without oxygen. Usually after 5 minutes, we were like, it's like touch and go. So we try to figure out the issue as soon as possible. So like I said, when you go into a hospital with like stroke-like symptoms, automatically a stroke alert is going to get called because time is of the essence. You cannot lose any time when it comes to stroke. I mean, with any medical condition, but with stroke, especially heart attacks and whatnot, you cannot lose time. Time is a big factor.
Wow. So from what you just said, It appears mass stroke,
Mm-hmm.
and the one that can disable the whole body
Mm-hmm.
or the part of the body,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost the same thing.
Yeah.
Or there are differences.
Well, it's hard for me to say because, like, I'm not sure what type of stroke you had. I'm not sure if it was a blockage or if it was a bleed. But it can present in different ways. So one person, maybe half their body, they cannot move. Another person, they cannot speak. Another person, they cannot understand. So I had one neighbor actually, I forgot how long ago that I last saw him. It's probably been over 10 years, back in Jersey. Now he's Hispanic. He spoke Spanish and English. Unfortunately, after his stroke, it affected his speech, right? So then he lost all English. Like he couldn't understand English anymore. He couldn't speak English anymore. It reverted all back to Spanish.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, that's exactly what happened to me. I couldn't speak English. I can speak Krobo because I was a Krobo. I'm a Krobo, so I can speak Krobo, but it's very difficult for me to understand English or even speak. So I think that is exactly is something very similar to what happened to me.
So it presents in many different ways. Unfortunately, there's no one way a stroke will present. So some people will say, I have this nagging headache. Or some people will say, my vision has been off lately. Or some people will say, I have like this tingling or this numbness in my leg. Or somebody will say, like, they're looking at you, but they can't understand what you're saying. Or to them, they're speaking to you, but it's coming out like mumbling. They're mumbling, or it sounds gibberish. But in their head, there's like, they're speaking clearly, but what's coming out their mouth is not what they're thinking. So it just presents, unfortunately, in many different ways. There's no one set way that a stroke will present.
Wow.
Yeah.
You actually said something about diabetes. And I want to know the relationship between diabetes and stroke, because it appears to me that almost all the time, most of the doctors try to see my
blood sugars,
my blood sugar and all those things. They relate my condition to diabetes. I don't know whether diabetes and stroke has a relationship.
Yes, diabetes is a risk factor for stroke, unfortunately. So diabetes affects your blood vessels, right? Which can damage your blood vessels, making them more susceptible to stroke, making them more likely for you to have a stroke as well, too. So unfortunately, yes, they are related. So if a person is diabetic and they're in the hospital for a stroke, yes, we're monitoring blood sugars. Also, because most of the time you're probably not being fed while they're giving you all these medications and whatnot. You probably, depending on where the stroke occurred, you're probably not able to eat yourself. So now they have to give you, well, you're getting fluids, and then depending on like how bad things are or how good things are or how long you've been there, if they're giving you any extra nutrients, they also need to make sure they're not spiking your blood sugars or dropping you too low.
One of the things that that happened to me is that I could not read. I could not read.
Like
sometimes
vision, or like you couldn't comprehend what
I could not comprehend what I'm reading.
Okay.
When I read, I can read, but I don't even know what
you're reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for me to even get a job or even work. Is this something that happens to almost every stroke victim?
No. No. Like I said, it depends on where it occurred.
Okay.
Yeah. So it sounds like from what you're telling me, where your stroke occurred, it affected your comprehension and like speech. But that's not always the case for everybody.
Okay.
So most of the time when we do notice these things, especially if a patient is stable enough medically to go home, they don't always go directly home. Usually we have them go to a rehab facility, a skilled nursing facility. For most people, it's to regain strength, to continue physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, to help rebuild some of the life skills that they were doing beforehand, or relearn, unfortunately, some of these life skills. For some people, like, they lose mobility, you have to keep their limbs moving. You don't want their limbs to, like, what we call atrophy or, like, thin out, right? It's like somebody whose arm has been in a cast for like 6 weeks. You take the cast off, you could visibly tell that their muscles are a lot weaker. So you want to re-strengthen those muscles. You want to reteach those muscles, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Same thing with, like, speech. If it affected speech or whatnot, of course, we continue on. If it affected your speech or how you eat or whatnot, those are things that you go to a rehab facility to relearn how to do, or to strengthen yourself on how to do that, so that when you're home, you're able to do these things on your own. The goal is to trying to get you back to where you were, but that's not always the case.
So for my case, it took me roughly 4 years to at least start understanding. I can even listen to the news and hear what you're saying. How long does it take a person who fortunately has been able to go to the hospital?
Yeah.
Because I know that there's some who could not even get a chance to go to the hospital. How long would it take the person to fully recover? Like, even can somebody really recover fully?
Yes, there are some people who fortunately do recover, make a full 100% recovery. But to put a time on how long that's going to take, that's hard to do. Only God knows that one. Yeah, only God knows that one. So, like, I have a patient who, she was completely independent. She's 50s, I think, in her 50s. Completely independent, was doing everything her own, and then unfortunately had a stroke. Right now, she's very weak. Her left side it affected the right side of her brain, so now the left side of her body is very weak, unfortunately. And her speech is sometimes garbled, mumbled. She can't always speak clearly. And she's been my patient for over 3 years now. And there are times where it's like, it may seem like she's getting better, but then there are times where it's like, she's actually getting worse. I think she actually recently just had another mini stroke, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah. I've had one other patient who, she had, I think, 2 or 3 strokes in the past. She was in her 70s. And she just happened to recover from them. Thank God. But no, she had all these other complications because of her history of high blood pressure and diabetes and kidney failure and all this other stuff. It played a role in her recovery. And so, unfortunately, this is sad, but unfortunately she had to, and she's on blood thinners, right? Usually after a person's been or has had a stroke or a heart attack or whatnot, they're usually on blood thinners to help it prevent it from happening again. Unfortunately, she had to have a procedure done, and her blood thinner was stopped, I think, 2 to 3 days before when she saw the surgeon or whoever was doing the procedure. They usually will have you stop your blood thinners before the procedure to prevent, like, excess bleeding. They had her stop the blood thinner like 2 days before. Unfortunately, she had another stroke and passed away. So it depends on the person. It depends on your lifestyle beforehand. It depends on your risk factors beforehand. So there's no set time to say at this point is when you're going to recover. And I try to explain that to my patients. Like, I don't know the answers, right? I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
Your guess is as good as mine. I'm not God.
Yeah.
I don't try to play God. I'll tell you what I know medically. Yeah. Right. But then the rest of it is we leave it in God's hand.
Yeah.
So I try to have my patients, I try to help them understand that. And for a lot of patients, it's hard to comprehend that because, a lot of them were fully functional. A lot of them were very independent. A lot of them were doing their own things. And so to say, like, this one patient, I know she gets very frustrated because it's like, I was doing everything beforehand and now I can't do anything. My family is now having to care for me. It's a lot for a person to take.
Yeah.
Some people don't cope well with that. It's like, I was fully independent. Now my independence is gone. Not that they're not grateful for having their family or friends help them, but it's just like, who are you at this point? It's like some of them sometimes lose a part of themselves.
Yeah.
Or they're trying to regain who they were or try to relearn who they were.
Yeah.
And that can take a toll on patients mentally. So it's not just a physical battle that patients tend to fight. It's also a mental battle as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now, like I said, some people do marvelous and recover very well. Others have a hard time. Like, imagine you're walking, you're doing everything fine. Next thing you know, you can't walk anymore.
Yeah.
It's hard to cope with. So I just try to help my patients as best as they need. I try not to be cookie cutter, especially with all my patients. Just so whatever I could do to help them and what they need is what I'll do.
Yeah. Until I had this thing, I never imagined that at my age, I'll have something like that. When you talk about stroke, you may be talking about somebody who is maybe
older.
50s or even 60s. But these days, recently, a guy was at work. And right at work is a Ghanaian too, right here in Columbus. He fell down and it's stroke. Unfortunately for him, he cannot speak. He cannot understand. He couldn't move. Go around anymore. Up till now. But he's 37 years. What is really wrong? The age factor. It seems it's
not something
it's coming
think.
down. Is it our food? Is it our lifestyle? What is the problem?
I think it has to do with number one. Well, I wouldn't say number one in no particular order. I think things that contribute to that are, like I said before, your family history, your genetics, right? We can't change those. Those are things that we can't change.
Yeah.
But things that we can change, as you mentioned, lifestyle, how you're eating, what comorbidities you have, or what other conditions do you have? Did this person have diabetes? Did this person have high blood pressure? Was this person eating well? Was this person taking care of themselves? So I can't say there's one thing that is causing it to happen in younger patients, but I think all these things play a part, especially lifestyle. Lifestyle definitely plays a part. In our food. In our Ghanaian community, we tend to cook with, lots of oils. And back home in Ghana, that's cool because, a lot of it is natural foods. A lot of it is not processed. A lot of it. And then you're walking a lot in Ghana, right? You're walking a lot abroad. Here, it's a very sedentary lifestyle. You sit a lot of times, right? We don't go out anymore. Even nowadays, I don't even see kids playing in the neighborhoods anymore. Like how we used to when I grew up. Right? So we're all stuck behind our screens and our phones. We're not eating well. We're not sleeping well. We're not taking care of our bodies. So our bodies, unfortunately, some respond negatively to that. Right. And it could be, yes, I think food also plays a part. Like, we're not watching what we eat. And we live in a culture where fast food is everywhere. Is everywhere. Even just driving down here, I can count more than 10 fast food places I passed. Meanwhile, and it's cheap, quote unquote, even that's getting expensive because it's harder to get healthier foods. Healthier foods are more expensive. So it's like, I have patients, like some diabetics, like, Well, they're not getting better. Their blood sugars are not getting better because they can't afford to eat better. And that's all. It's not necessarily that they need more medication. It's just they need to eat better, but they don't have the means to. So I think it's just a factor of everything. Yeah. I can't say there's one particular reason why younger patients it's happening in younger patients. I think it's a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, especially the age. It's alarming, actually.
It is.
Because I never know about it until it happened to me. And then I started watching and observing. And I realized that no, this person had it, this person had it. In Columbus here alone, I've witnessed about 4 or 5 cases. And I happen to be the luckiest one. I happen to be the luckiest one. And even me, it took me 4 years. Is there medicine? When somebody had a stroke, is there medicine?
Yes. But it's more so medications for the other things. So like when you have a stroke, you want to make sure your blood pressure is controlled, right? You want to make sure your cholesterol is controlled. You want to make sure your blood is thin enough that it's not going to throw another clot, right? So usually you're on blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication, blood thinners, and then any other. If you have diabetes, of course, you're on your diabetic medications. If you have thyroid issues, you're on those medications as well too. But the biggest thing usually is a blood thinner to prevent, if it was a blockage. Like I said, if you've had a bleed, we don't want to give you blood thinners because that's going to make things worse.
Oh, okay.
But to say, is there medication that can prevent a stroke? No. It's all medications that will, once it happens, try to prevent it from happening again. I think one thing too, though, how you said it's a thing that's happening in the community, especially here in Columbus. I feel like within I won't even say Ghanaian community, within the African community, there's this stigma of you have to keep everything to yourself. And I think true. Sometimes that hurts us.
That is really true.
Yeah. And I think sometimes that hurts us because it's like, oh, you go to your doctor, how is everything? Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Everything is not fine.
Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's true.
Right? You want to put up this front like you're fine, your blood pressure's fine, but you're not fine. Right? Your family members, or even some of our family members, they won't even tell you what diseases are in the family for you even to know. Right? And so for doctors, we like to know family history. Yes. Because if it's happened to one person, it could happen to another person.
People. Yes, that's
right.
True.
That's what we use, like breast cancer or cancers per se. We want to know if somebody in your family had cancer because it's likely. Not saying that you were going to get it, but there's a possibility that you can get it. And like I said, we like to do preventative medicine. So if usually breast cancer, we start screening at age 40 or 50, depending on whose guidelines you're going by. Now, if you've had a family member, like say a mother or a sister who's had breast cancer before, we start screening a lot earlier. We don't wait to that 40 or 50. Same thing. If you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you have all these certain diseases, thyroid diseases, we start screening a lot earlier. But how can we do that if we don't know what we don't know?
That's true.
So I think sometimes this whole thing of, I'm going to keep it to myself, I'm not going to let people know what's going on, I think it hurts us.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's not a discussion that is commonly had. So I'm glad that you're doing this to bring more awareness, not to scare anybody, but like we also need to start taking care of ourselves and being open with taking care of ourselves. If something, I'm going to go to my doctor, I'm going to my annual physicals. Just because I'm a doctor doesn't mean that I'm going to forego my own medical care because I think I know everything. No. So I think having these discussions in the community would help.
Yeah.
And show people it's okay to talk about these things. It's not a stigma. There's nothing wrong with you. I think also, especially within I don't want to say religious communities, but within the churches and whatnot, is like, well, I know God is going to do it. I believe God's going to do it too.
Yes.
Right? I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Born and raised. I'm in church.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm in the church just say to be in the church, but I also have my relationship with Christ.
Absolutely.
But this is one thing that he has sent me to do. Right? As his representation here on earth, I'm a representation of him. He's the master healer. I'm just one of his worker bees. Right? So I think there's this stigma too. There's this thing where it's just like, I'm just going to sit at home and God is going to heal me. I have no doubt that God is going to heal you.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. But the thing is that we also have to take steps in doing that, right?
Absolutely.
The Bible says faith without works is dead. So if I'm sitting here and somebody tells me I have high blood pressure and I'm like, okay, well, I know God's going to heal me, but yet I'm not doing everything I'm supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
And then we get blamed like, and the doctor said, I'm like, no, I didn't give you these conditions. You gave it to yourself. I'm just reporting to you now what I see.
Yes.
Right? So I think that there's that aspect of it too, where we just need to be more mindful, right? And consider all aspects, right?
Yeah.
Certain God heals and works in like all different ways, right? It's not always just, for some people, it may be instant miracles, right? For others, it may be using a physician or somebody here on earth to conduct that miracle. So I think there's that part of it too.
For the Ghanaian or the African communities, one thing I've realized that we don't go for checkups. I don't know whether maybe because of where we come from, it's difficult to even go to hospital because I remember I went to the hospital in Ghana and I came back home. I didn't have the chance to see the doctor because there were so many people. I went there at 6 in the morning and I left at 4 p.m.
My goodness.
And I've not seen the doctor in Koforidua Central Hospital.
Yeah.
You see, so it's difficult to see doctors. So we come here with the same mindset. Meanwhile, here it's easy to get a doctor, but we don't
take advantage.
Many people have not gone to the hospital before here in Columbus or in America ever since they came from Ghana.
Yeah.
If I say it, that it's easy to go to the hospital, they would not believe it. You are the doctor.
Yeah.
Maybe when you say it, they will understand or they will hear.
Surprisingly, they may not believe me either. I'm just saying. Surprisingly, they may not believe me either. I think there is a stigma, or I don't want to say stigma. I think there are certain things that have also happened, like coming from where you're coming from, or other medical. I don't want to say that. No, I don't want to say that at all. Yeah, I would just say yes. It's they're probably gonna find it hard to believe. But I think in that case, that shouldn't be an excuse. For people not to go see their doctor, because there are many different avenues of getting healthcare, especially here. There are free clinics, right? Even if you don't have insurance or whatnot, there are free clinics that you can go to. I know, like Ohio Health, we have the mobile unit. It's essentially like a doctor's office on wheels that will go into certain communities that don't have the opportunity to go out to their doctors. There's those too. I know we do sports physicals on some of those mobile units. Like we'll go to the schools and do physicals for the children, right? Every year there's health fairs. Plethora of health fairs. Even in August, every year they have the annual African American Men's Walk, right? So they have a whole bunch of physicians there. They do blood pressure screenings, they do cholesterol screenings, they go through medications and whatnot. Yeah. So there are a lot of different avenues of obtaining health care. Yeah. It's more so of knowing what those avenues are. Yeah. Yes. So if you can't come see me, or let's say my panel is booked, or I'm not taking new patients, or my schedule's full, there's still other options.
Yeah.
There are free clinics that you can go to. Like I said, there are these health screenings that you can, or health fairs that you can go to. And most of the time, not most of the time, all the time, if you don't have a primary care doctor, they will get you set up with one.
Mm-hmm.
So like I practice in Delaware, Ohio. And sometimes I'll have patients driving from Columbus or like Southern Ohio to come see me. I'm like, what are you doing all the way up here?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, we couldn't find a doctor in Columbus to see us. Everybody's full. And I was like, no, I'm not going to make this difficult for you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'll go ahead and text some of my colleagues like, hey, I have this patient. Can you see them for me? Because I don't want to, they have young children or they have hard time finding transportation. So maybe not every physician will do it, but there are physicians who will go out their way to try and care for their patients and do what they can to get their patients access to care. So I think even though there's a misconception like, well, they may not see me or whatnot, or I might get stuck waiting for a doctor for what, that was 10 hours that you waited for this person or this doctor. Yeah, you can, there's free clinics, there's all those things. Like I remember even at downtown at Grant, there's a walk-in clinic. You don't need an appointment. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say that because things have changed since COVID. I mean, you can still walk in, but I think they just have certain slots that you can walk in. Right? Yeah. So I know we used to see all types of patients there. And if they didn't have a primary care doctor, we would try and get them established with somebody who would follow with them. So it's not always just see you by. Yeah. Most of us will try and get you, not most of the time we'll try and get you established with somebody who's going to follow you moving forward.
One thing we have, most of the times we'll be talking about is healthcare in America is expensive.
It sure is, yes.
So sometimes it scares people to go to the hospital. So even if you are sick, you cover it, and instead of going to the hospital, are there interventions for people who don't make a lot of money?
Like financial help? Yes, there are definitely programs that will help financially to help with medical bills and whatnot. Yes. I know we have something called HCAP, where if it's like you're not working or you were below poverty line, or I forgot what the exact number it is, they will, it's not necessarily free, but they will give you healthcare where you don't have to pay for it. They'll cover your healthcare for you. And like I said, there are the free clinics. Like there's the Grace Clinic. It's affiliated with, I forgot what church or ministry, but it's a free clinic, right? They're not asking for money up front or anything like that. And most of the time, those providers there or the doctors there, it's all volunteer work. So it's not like they're charging you to see you. It's volunteer work. Okay. It's something that they want to do. Yeah. And it's not at a cost to you. Now these places like these run on donations, they run on grants, they run on like help from the government, so that it comes at a no cost to the patient. So there are avenues to get healthcare, even if unfortunately you're not able to afford it. But I feel like it's I won't even go down that rabbit hole, because it's frustrating sometimes, even as a physician, where you're trying to treat your patient, but because of cost, they don't or they can't take care of themselves. Yeah, it's very frustrating. Yeah. And there's a misconception like, well, if I go see the doctor is getting all that money. I don't see a dime of what most patients pay. They're like some patients will say, oh, well, if you do this test, you're going to get all that. I'm like, I don't get that money. How I get paid is not what you pay them is not, I'm not getting that. Yes. My salary is, and how I get paid is completely different from what you are paying upfront at the front office or whatnot. Yeah. Like if a CAT scan, they're charging you for a CAT scan, or I order a CAT scan, I'm not getting that money. Right? Those things are expensive. Yeah, that's true. I remember I had a CAT scan, it like cost me like $1,002. I said, hey, even me. $1,002, I'm crying. But it's that's not money that's coming to my pocket. So I feel like there's also the misconception that, oh, doctors get all the money from the patients, or we're trying to take from patients.
That's true.
No.
That's true.
No.
Now, I've been on aspirin almost all my life, ever since I had this case. Even when I have it in a car, I have one here, I have one there. So that anytime I feel like something, I can just take a piece. But I know a lot of people don't know about it. Because maybe if I know about aspirin, this might not happen to what happened to me.
Yeah. But I mean, as a young patient, you wouldn't think to take aspirin every day, you know?
Yeah.
So.
How good is it? Does it, because I actually take it every day.
Yeah.
But sometimes when I take it, like I have some headache a little bit sometimes after I've taken it. But I don't know. I want to hear from you.
So yes, aspirin is one of those medications that are used, and there have been a lot of changes to aspirin guidelines as to who should be taking it and when they should start taking it and whatnot. Beforehand, we said that, like, you know, all males over the age of 50 should take it. And then it's like, oh no, if you've had a heart attack or a stroke before, you should take it indefinitely to prevent further heart attacks or strokes. But even now, guidelines are changing where beforehand, like if you had a stroke, you get started on aspirin, you get started on Plavix, which is another blood thinner. You get started on a statin, which helps with lowering your cholesterol. You get started on another medication that lowers your blood pressure. And then after a year, we will stop the Plavix, the blood thinner, and continue you on aspirin, because it is also essentially another blood thinner. But now they're saying, you know, I haven't fully read up on this, but now they're saying, like, you know, no, actually stop the aspirin and take the Plavix indefinitely. So aspirin is still good to take, but it just depends on why you're taking it. For some people, most of the time it is preventative, because they've had a previous episode, right? Even an aspirin is something we actually use in pregnant women too, for cases like preeclampsia and things of that sort. But there are risk factors as to why we would even say start taking it. So it's not like, oh, I'm young, I'm just going to take aspirin like it's a vitamin. There are certain reasons why we would even advise you to take aspirin. So, yeah. So it's not just one medication like a vitamin. There are reasons why you would want to take it or not want to take it.
Okay. So it means that one way or the other is good.
Yeah, I mean, in your case, I definitely would take it because you've had, unfortunately, an episode in the past. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think we've covered enough on stroke.
Okay.
But there are still people or young people who want to become medical doctors. They want to become doctors. In fact, my wife, I mean, she's older now, so
that means absolutely nothing. That means absolutely nothing.
But there are so many people, young people who want to become doctors. They don't know where to start, how to start. So one thing I always do on this podcast is when somebody like a professional or somebody comes on this podcast, I try to ask them how they became who they have become.
Okay.
And see somebody who's watching who might also want to become.
So like the path to medicine.
What's the path?
Oh man. All right. I haven't talked about this in a long time, since I've almost forgotten it.
I know.
So I don't think I always wanted to be a doctor. And you know, African parents, top 3 professions: doctor, lawyer, engineer. Yeah, none of those 3 were my top 3 at first.
Wow.
I think I want to be an artist or an astronaut. I think at one point a marine biologist. Like I wanted to be everything under the sun. So it wasn't until I think high school or maybe I don't even think in high school I was thinking about medicine, to be honest. I don't remember what I was even thinking about, but I don't know. But I just made sure, like, my mom was a teacher. She retired, so academics were always forefronts in our household. Like, we always had to be the best of the best.
Yeah.
In terms of academics. I think it was in high school where maybe I started thinking about medicine. And I wanted to go to, I forgot what it's called, but there's this science college in Philadelphia. It's Philadelphia College of Science or something like that. And that's where I wanted to go to school. And there's a couple other places I wanted to go to school, but my mom was like, no, you're going to Rutgers. So I'm from Jersey, so I went to Rutgers.
Oh, so you came from Jersey to
Ohio? Okay. Yeah. So I've only been in Ohio for 8 years now, 7, 8 years. Yep, originally a Jersey girl.
How?
7 or 8 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
originally. Oh, then you've been here for a long time.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised. Wow. Born and raised Jersey girl.
Yeah, we were in Jersey last week.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I should have had you go say hi to my mom. Yeah. So I went to Rutgers, and at Rutgers, this is where I would say most people should begin. So in high school, I told my guidance counselors from the jump, this is what I want to do. So in a way, I was checking in with them. I took the initiative. A lot of people think that people are going to come chasing after you to help you. No, you have to take the initiative, right? So I told them this is what I want to do. So I worked, make sure my grades were good, make sure I got myself involved in extracurricular activities to make me look like a nice, well-rounded student. So I wasn't just books. I took leadership positions. I was in different clubs. I was in the marching band. I did the play, whatever extracurricular activity you could do it.
Yeah.
You could do. I did it mostly to get out the house from my parents, but also to help my application too. But then fast forward, went to Rutgers. I was a biology major at first. And I think there's also that misconception you have to be a biology major or a science major to do medicine. Nope, you do not. You could do dance.
Yeah.
Or you could be an art major, right? As long as you fulfill the prerequisites for medical school, you're fine. So there was this thing called Audaces at Rutgers, run by Dr. Khan. I'm going to send this to him. Shout out to you, Dr. Khan. And it was a program for underrepresented minorities and whatnot who were interested in medicine. And through that, we did like tutoring, and we would go to visit different medical schools and things of that sort. So it put us with the people we needed to know. It connected us with the people we needed to know. And like MCAT prep, don't ask me anything about the MCAT now because it's changed since I've taken it and I don't know anything about the new format. But it just helped. That program really helped us like put us on a narrower path to medicine, right? It was geared towards those who wanted to go into medicine. So that really helped. So I would say if you're a young person, finding those programs now at whether that's in high school, whether that's in college, and even if it's not through the school, there are a lot of like I think it's the Columbus Physician Network or something like that, Black Physician Network. It's a group of Black doctors, right? And they hold different events most of the time throughout the year, and they go to different high schools to talk to the younger generation who want to become doctors. So getting connected with one of those, getting a mentor who's in medicine, right? So who can advise you down those things. And mentorship is very important. Like I said, we had mentorship through Audaces. So they were saying, okay, do this, don't go here, do this. Let me read through your personal statement for you. Nope, cross this out. That helped, right? You could do it on your own, but why do it on your own when you have people who've already done it for you and have opened the door already? So why build a new door, right? When you could just go through one that's been already opened. So mentorship, I would stress on getting mentors who are in medicine, who are doing what you want to do so they can help advise you. When I finished college, I took a gap year, so I didn't go straight into medical school. So I worked for a year before I went into medical school. I worked as a medical scribe in an emergency room. So when the doctors would see patients, I would type their notes for them. Right. And through that, I got to work closely with the doctors, got how they think, what medications they use, this, that, and the third. So it exposed me a lot. I did a lot of volunteer work in college. I did a lot of programs geared towards students who want to go into medicine. So all that helped my medical school application, right? So it wasn't just this one boring person who's coming out of college and wants to go into medicine. It was life experience, right? A lot of volunteer work. You can volunteer in a hospital. You can volunteer in a nursing home. There's a lot of things that you can do. But then also you also have to figure out, why do you want to do medicine, right? Medicine isn't for everybody. And I say this in the most sincere way. It's not for everybody. Just because your parents or somebody told you that you should be a doctor does not mean you should go be a doctor.
Absolutely.
It takes a certain type of person, a certain type of grace, to do medicine, because it's a big sacrifice, right? A lot of people talk about, how much money doctors make and whatnot, which if you really think about what even took us to get there, it's trivial. Right? The sacrifice, the emotional sacrifice, the financial sacrifice. So while I'm in med school and broke med students with so much debt under my belt already, some of my colleagues who went into accounting or finance or other business, they're already working. Meanwhile, I'm a broke med student with like $200,000 to $300,000 in debt. Yes, people don't talk about the financial sacrifice, right? People don't talk about the debt that you come out with. If you're lucky, you get scholarships and grants, but not all of us have that opportunity to get that, because unfortunately, on paper, my parents made too much for us to qualify for different scholarships or grants. So we had to pay for a lot of this ourselves. So taking out student loans. So when I left medical school, I had over $400,000 in loans from college and under medical school.
400.
Yes, people don't talk about that. People just talk about, you're a doctor, you have money. Yeah, I'm paying my loans. I'm paying all these money. Like I'm paying
$400.
Yes, average medical school debt is $250,000 to $300,000. They don't talk about that. Now, there are some students who their parents, saved up for them and they're able to pay school off and whatnot. But like I said, for the rest of us, we took out loans, which I'm still paying on right now. So people don't talk about that financial commitment. And then when you get into residency, you're not making full doctor money. You're making like below minimum wage.
Yeah.
Working obscene amount of hours. I remember, I think there was times where I clocked 100 hours in 1 week. That's like 2.5 full-time jobs. Yeah, in 1 week. So people don't talk about that. But I would say, no, I don't want that to deter people from saying, I don't want to go into medicine, but I'm just saying it's not a decision you take lightly. It's something you really have to think about. It's something you really have to be committed to, and have people who are going to be committed with you, right? You need a good support system, because it's a lonely place sometimes. Like you go far away. You can't always go out to all your functions. I mean, I missed a couple of my nieces and nephews being born because I was always at school or studying for the next exam. Right? You miss out on a lot of family time. So it's a big sacrifice to say that I want to be in medicine. But it was a rewarding, yes. Yeah. It is rewarding. And not just financially. That's a whole other part. But it's rewarding, and like you're helping people get better. Absolutely. Right? It's nice to see like patients who they come to me sick and then they start coming back to me and they're like, oh my gosh, Dr. Boateng, I feel so much better. It brings me joy when I hear that. Like I see patients who are struggling, and then after a couple visits, after we work together, they come back and they're like a completely different new person. So long story short, path to medicine, mentorship, making sure that this is something you really want to do, because it is a big sacrifice. It is rewarding in the end, but it's a long road too. In the fact that you do high school, you do 4 years of college, you do 4 years of medical school, then you do 3 years of residency minimum, depending on what specialty you want to go into. So if you want to do general surgery, that's 5 years of residency after medical school. So that's 9 years of training.
Wow.
If you want to be a pediatrician, after 4 years of medical school, you do another 3 years of your pediatric residency. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, 4 years of medical school plus 7 years of residency. And like I told you, residents don't get paid much. Right? So it's a long road. So it's like 11 plus years of training to finally see your reward. Financially, at least.
Honestly, these are some of the things I don't know. I've had a chance to meet few doctors in America here. But unfortunately, we've not been able to talk about the way and how they became doctors. For people who are coming from Africa, I mean, you have a dream, you have a plan, you know.
Dream and plan,
and probably you want to say, okay, I want to go into medicine. That's what you say. You need to really be committed to this, because it's not a joke.
An easy road, and it's not a joke. And at the end of the day, it's not just like, I don't want to downplay other professions or whatnot, but people's lives are literally in your hand.
Absolutely. Yes, medicine.
People's lives are literally in your hand.
You know, when I was rushed to the hospital, actually, I was taken from the agent care on 161 road, and so I was taken to St. Anne's. And so when I got to St. Anne's, after a few checks, and then they realized that they have to take me straight to Mount Carmel, East. And they use a chopper. So the moment I couldn't understand what they are saying, but the moment I realized it's chopper or helicopter, I realized that now
serious.
This is serious, because I mean, why couldn't they use
the ambulance or
ambulance? So I started asking, I don't know who she is, the one pushing the wheel or something like. I said, what's wrong? Why are they taking me through? Like, because I was alone. I was afraid. But there's confidence that I had in me that I'm in good hands, because I believe that the doctors are well trained and they know what they are going to do. And fortunately, they did the job, and I'm here now. So I understand what you are saying. Yes, I understand what you are saying. But there is something that I wanted to say, and I know that you might not be able to answer though. But we know doctors are the ones who are going to help us to recover when we are sick and all that. But to train them is very expensive. And we put the financial burden on them. Somebody who's going to study and help us. And they are going to pay
all this money.
You know, sometimes it's something. I don't really.
It's not fair, but I guess that's the system for you.
It's not fair, honestly.
But it's also changed in the fact that, yes, doctors are still respected, but back then, a lot of doctors owned their own practices and had control of medicine. Nowadays, unfortunately, the big corporations control medicine. Business controls medicine. I don't want to say the government, but there are a lot of people who control medicine who aren't doctors. Unfortunately, like, these big hospital systems are buying out smaller practices, right? Because the practices not all of them can sustain on their own, financially at least. And most doctors find it easier just to, sell their practice and have somebody else take care of the overhead. Have somebody else take care of the billing, have somebody else cover my malpractice and whatnot. And it's not like, I wouldn't say they're selling out or anything, but it's just, medicine takes a toll on you as well. right? Medicine takes a toll on the doctors. You know, a lot of physicians are burnt out, especially after COVID. A lot of physicians are burnt
That's true.
out.
That's true.
Like if I tell you and sit here, I'm like, hey, no, I was burnt out. Sometimes I still say, I think I'm still burnt out, right? Just because you deal with so much within medicine as a physician yourself, right? The emotional toll of caring for your patients. You're always sitting there wondering, what happened to this patient? Should I have done this? I wish I could have done this. Or you're going through cases in your head. I remember when I used to work in the hospital, and the thing is, it's not like a regular 7 to 7 job where at 7 o'clock I'm clocking out.
Yeah.
No, if I need to make sure all the patients are put away, tidied up, everything is done before, because you don't want to leave a mess for the next shift to pick up, right? So it's sometimes where I should be going home at 7, but I'm going home at 9:10 because there was an emergency. I can't just, oh, bye. I have to deal with that emergency before I go. There's also times where it's like you're always thinking about what happened to that patient. Should I have done this? Could I have done this? Like I'm telling you, every patient that I've lost, unfortunately, not because I did something, but it's just like you're always wondering, did I do something?
Yeah.
Is there something I missed? Like there's this emotional part that people don't talk about. And sometimes you get to a point where you block it out. And that's where a patient, sometimes you may not see the patient because to you, they're just like, I have to take care of this person and move on to the next thing. There's just so much to do, unfortunately. So it takes an emotional toll on, you. And it's like having a good support system is very, very key, right? It's having people who understand what you're going through to like talk to about. So like my colleagues from residency, we're very close to this day because like we still run cases by each other. Like, hey, I have this patient. What would you do? Or like, hey, man, I had an awful day today. This patient did this, then third. Or, oh man, I wish I could have done this. Or like, there's a lot of things that you think about that most patients don't see.
I've seen a movie. No, it's not a movie. A series.
Grey's Anatomy. Is it a
Chicago
medical?
Med.
Chicago, yeah.
And I've seen something autonomy.
Grey's Anatomy.
Yes. And there's another one which I really love.
There's so many. The Residents, ER, The Good Doctor? What else?
Yes, I've seen that one
Scrubs, too. New Amsterdam.
And I love those things because of doctors, actually. I really want to see what really happens with doctors, you know, how they do their things. I would say that like I don't watch a lot of these medical shows because I'm like, sometimes when you're watching, you're like, yeah, that's a lie. Yeah, that would never happen. Yeah, no, that would never happen. Yeah. Or like Grey's Anatomy, a lot of the drama, and there's people start to think, oh, this is how our lives are. No, it's far from it. Yeah. So I tend not to watch a lot of it because there are some good ones. Like I loved New Amsterdam. Because I felt like that really was. Oh, I think Amsterdam. Yes. Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yes. I like that one because it's like, wow, I feel like this is truly telling what our lives is like. Yeah. Not everything, but it's close to what our life is like. And then the other one was called The Resident that I like too, because I felt like that was close to what my life was like.
I've seen that, but I've not really watched. Yeah.
I didn't even finish the series. I just watched a couple episodes. I'm like, oh, okay, this is close to what my life is like. But I try not to watch it because some of the things are so frustrating. Like some of these cases that they get, I'm like, yeah, that would never happen in medicine. But okay, all for TV ratings. Why not? So yeah, it's a lot. So long story short, just for anyone who wanted to go into medicine, just find a mentor. Yeah. Really sit down and think about, is this what you truly want to do? Because it's a big sacrifice, right? And medicine, you're serving others. It's a line of service. You don't serve yourself, you serve other people. No matter who they are, what they do, you serve other people.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, your job is to make sure this person is well, physically, mentally, emotionally, as much as you possibly can. I mean, you can't play God.
Yeah.
I tell my patients, I'm not God, but I'll do what I humanly possibly can to help you.
Yeah.
Right. And then also, like I said, it's a big commitment. But if it's like something you really want to do, go for it. And like in the case of your wife, it's never too late. I had classmates who were in their 50s and 60s, 40s and 50s I had one classmate, he was a lawyer beforehand, and he decided that I don't want to do law anymore, I want to do medicine. Yeah. Switched career paths, went through all the process again, took the MCATs again, went into medical school. Meanwhile, he had 4 little kids. Yeah. But his wife was there. So great support system is needed. It's needed because there are times where not every day is going to be happy-go-lucky. Yeah. So it's a rewarding career, but it's something I would say to take the time and really think about why you want to do it. Yeah. And then find the people who have gone through it and open the doors for you. Yeah. Mentors, and work with them. Yeah.
Now you are married.
Yes.
And you have a beautiful girl. Yep. And you have your career. Yep. So the 3 things together. Yep. So how are you managing?
Yeah, day by day. Day by day. So I'm still currently on leave. So I think I'll get a full grasp of when I go back to work. But I do, like I said, I have my co-residents who I did residency with. Most of them are married with children as well, and we keep in touch with each other. And we actually have a page, especially the parents have a page like, hey, what are you guys doing for this, or this one is sick, or like we bounce ideas off of each other, or like talk to each other to just keep us sane. Yeah. But it's yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
I mean, it's different. Because it used to be alone. I mean, when you go to work, you don't really, I mean, you may be thinking about your boyfriend or something like that, but
it's just work. Yeah. So now it's just. But
now you are committed to family as well. And I think, like we always say, family is first.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Family's first and I love medicine, but my family comes first.
Yes. Family
my
is
family
first.
will come first. If anything, somebody were to call me.
If anything goes wrong with your family,
I can't focus.
You cannot really function as a
like I remember one time my dad got into an accident, and what even happened? I don't remember if I called my mom. They weren't going to tell me. And so I happened to call my mom that day, and she's like, and I could hear the hospital bells in the background. I was like, why are you in the hospital? She's like, how do you know I was? I'm like, I work in the hospital. I know the sounds. They're like, oh yeah, your dad had an accident, blah, blah, blah. I text my manager, the office manager, the next day. I'm like, I'm not coming to work. I'm going to Jersey. Yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry, but my family comes first. And I don't, I care for my patients, but my family comes first. Yes. Because if they're not correct, I can't take care of my patients the way I want to. So.
Absolutely. That's true. Yeah.
So if I get a phone call or anything, baby sneezed or baby's not feeling, I'm out.
It's not an easy thing. As for children, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, so they will always come first.
Wow. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I am so much grateful to you for coming. Yeah. Unfortunately, my speech prevents me to perform the way I should. But I think it's the way I started. Yeah. When if you listen to all it, if you look at the podcast, you can see that I have made a very big progress.
And I think that's also inspiring and encouraging for others to see too. Like, hey, if this person is doing this, then I can do this too. Yes. I think it's very brave, encouraging, inspiring, like I said, to others out there. Like, wow, he's doing this. I can definitely do this too. And then just testament for your willpower. That you can come back after such a medical scare and to be able to do this. I think that's wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers. Thank you for watching, and hopefully in another episode we'll meet again. Thank you. Bye bye.